Beautiful. Okay, so when we're thinking about the question and the idea that we're looking at how a character is perceived, and we're thinking about how they feel targeted and they feel angry. That's what the student said, targeted and angry. So what's really helpful is if you write those keywords at the top. It can just be really helpful. It's not necessarily essential, but it can be helpful. How did the student say they felt? Anxious. So in some way, make sure that you're aware that that's a different focus. Maybe you could put it at the bottom. But what you don't want to do is get muddled up, because there was that moment at the beginning there where we got muddled up with who was feeling what. So if that helps to separate them in your mind, then that works for me. Now, we created a word bank before. We've already got that word bank. That's on the back of your page, and you can use that whenever you need to create those sentences and bring them together, because we don't want to be saying targeted and angry and anxious over and over again, especially because we know we need to get at least 4 good ideas in that. So, in the lead up to this scene, we've got the mention of Star's father. You've told us about how it makes it feel like there's a sense of what's happening by mentioning her daddy says not do this, her daddy says not to do that. The police are made reference to. What's it building? What's that to write? Building tension. Okay, so we've got the building of tension. We can put this just at the beginning because we know that's happened just before. What's it called when we're building tension and it's possibly alluding to something bad happening? Beautiful. Yep, we can use the idea of a particular feature might foreshadow, or if it's just that feel and mood, we've got a foreboding. Well done. So we've got this foreboding being built, and that's happened just before. Okay, so we might look to see if there's any more examples of that happening in the section that we are allowed to quote from, which is just this second page. So starting at the beginning, just to work through systematically like you might do in the exam, what sections do we want to draw our attention to with regard to this idea of Kelly feeling targeted and angry, or us feeling anxious as a reader? Where would we start? Yep.
He curses under his breath.
Lovely. So we've got this idea of him cussing under his breath. What is cussing? Swearing, yeah. Is that a formal term? To cuss? No. Does anyone know what that's called? Beautiful. It's colloquial. So I'm going to draw a little arrow up here. It's colloquial. And if you didn't know, that's okay. It just means it's like slang, okay? What is implied if someone's using colloquial language? What is it? Go on. Maybe not taken seriously. So is an element of them being what in some way? Pardon? Yeah, it could be relaxed. If we know that this is kind of a fueled piece of writing, we know that there's some kind of racial segregation, we were given that in the context, what might it imply? Yeah.
Being rebellious.
Lovely. A sense of rebellion. Because what do we want to be able to offer in our analysis? I'm doing little arrows here. It could be relax, it could be rebellion. What am I wanting to be able to offer? Yeah?
A variety of viewpoints.
Lovely. I'm wanting to offer those alternates, aren't I? Can I think of another one? Why might I want to make sure I speak really fluently and use some fancy vocab if I'm in a meeting with Mr. Kirkbride? What impression do I want to give him of me? Go on then.
You have respect for him.
Yeah, so what might happen if we're looking at the other way round? If he's using this colloquialism, it's informal, what might we think of him? Yeah, we might be thinking of him as being in some way lesser, socially lesser than this police officer, because it's linking with that social segregation we just talked about in the context. So him, in some way, we're looking at, the word is hierarchy. Sorry, I have to do a little dash there, I can't quite squeeze it in. That hierarchy, he's being represented as in some way lesser. Fabulous. So he cusses under his breath, turns Tupac down and manoeuvres the Impala to the side of the street. We're on Carnation, where most of the houses are abandoned and half the street lights are busted. Nobody around but us and the cop. Anything else there that adds to this foreboding that we had previous? Because we can only take quotations from this page. We wanted to talk about this one, but we can't have that one because it says from this page on. So anything there that adds this idea of foreboding, any language we could zoom in on. Keywords or phrases? What did you whisper there? So it's like a hint that something bad is going to happen, like foreshadowing. It's very similar. But whereas we said that like the foreshadowing was like a key thing had happened, but this is just like a feeling. It's an overall feeling. Go on then.
Is it just the fact that it's abandoned?
Lovely. We've got abandoned. Anything else that you could link with abandoned? Feels a little bit run down, doesn't it? Is there anything else that alludes to this idea of it being run down? Busted. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got some language here that we can link together. It's nice if we can do what with our quotations? Just one? More than one. If we can litter our quotations all the way through. So we've got this use of abandoned and busted. What could we say about them? They imply that the area is what? Unused. A little bit louder. Beautiful. So alluding to the unknown. Lovely. Deserted. And what's implied is something's kind of unknown. There's a bit of mystery there. It's deserted. What could happen? Yeah, a crime. Something shocking. We've got nobody around but us and the cop. What's implied there? The cop possibly has the advantage because there are no what?
Witnesses.
Beautiful, there's no witnesses. So what kind of sentence is this? Well, we've got nobody around but us and the cop. So we've got complex because we've got that extra information. But we've also got, we can think about the purpose of this sentence. Is it an interrogative? Is it a question? Is it a declarative, making a statement? What kind of... Oh, a declarative, fab. So we have this declarative, I'm running out of room here already, we've got loads of notes. This declarative statement, there's nobody around. Okay? It makes them feel what? Beautiful, Gabe, vulnerable. Ooh. I need a bigger bit of paper. So there's a sense of them feeling vulnerable. That's a nice bit of vocab that we can use in our analysis. Let's go back to the question. So a student said, we've got our keywords, that Khalil felt targeted and angry, and they felt that there was a feeling of anxiety or they felt anxious. Okay, so now already we've got our first paragraph. We can talk about the use of colloquialism or the colloquial language. It might be good if we see if there's any more. We could build it and litter it together, put it all in one point. So we'll see if there's any more. I think there might be. We could talk about that colloquial language is used to kind of segregate. Could present a relaxed atmosphere, however, it also shows that hierarchy, yeah? Then we can also talk about the language presenting them in a kind of threatening environment. The use of this declarative and the use of this, the use of the adjective abandoned and the idea that it's all busted. It's quite run down. Is there a word we could use to describe an area being run down? It begins with D. Could have derelict, yeah? Or oh, I like that one. Let's take yours. Deprived. Okay? Because we're just looking at up-leveling our vocabulary. Run down is correct, but we could use deprived. Beautiful. I love that. Khalil turns his ignition off. Wonder what this fool wants. Can we do anything with that? Yep.
Isn't that short? A little bit juxtapose the first one when he cusses under his breath, because there's this sort of element of fear. But then when he says that, then there's no fear there.
Okay, lovely. So we've got juxtaposition here. Beautiful, because we've got the use of terminology, the juxtaposition with the opening, and we'll just draw a little arrow. You need to come up with your own little codes. I'll draw a little arrow. I use a lot of arrows in my notes because you don't want to waste time writing things that an arrow will do the job. There's a real sense of confidence here. However, because of what we know about the situation, Star has said, you know, her daddy's the biggest loudmouth there is, and if he says be quiet, we need to be quiet. So if we're thinking about that in our mind, sometimes it's great to be confident, but in this case, what's it possibly coming across as? There's confidence, but it's a fine line between confidence and another feature that's not such a cocky or cockiness, but there's a better word to describe cockiness, yeah? Arrogance, yeah. So we could talk about the arrogance, okay? Nobody particularly wants to be arrogant. Confidence, great, but there's just a fine line sometimes. And I think Khalil definitely crosses this. Particularly with which word? Fool, yeah. So there's a sense of, is he respectful towards the police? No, so there's a disrespect there. I can't actually fit that in. I've totally run out of room. See if you can squeeze yours in. There's a sense of disrespect. Could possibly link that in with what? What have we mentioned that it could link nicely with? About this point up here. Yeah, we talked about respect and rebellion, didn't we? Could link those two together. That could work. Draw a little arrow there if I wanted to litter a bit of evidence. Yeah. What about the next part? The officer parks and puts his brights on. I blink to keep from being blinded. I remember something else Daddy said. If you're with somebody, you better hope they don't have nothing on them. Or both you're all going down. What can I do here? So we've got this use of bright lights. Does that come up again? It does, doesn't it? We noted that before. Whereabouts is it again? Can we see it anywhere else? Because remember, your author's intent, they're going to have carefully placed things, structured them for effect. Whereabouts is it, Gabe? Lovely. So we've got the idea of the blinded with the lights, and then he beams the flashlight down here, doesn't he? The officer follows his movements with the flashlight, and then the officer beams his flashlight in our faces. 3 times light is mentioned. Before you go, though, what could be represented? You've got to leave early, you've got an exit question. What could light represent, Cooney? Okay, to be blinded. What else could light normally represent? Truth. What else? We need layers. What else? Help him out. Go on. Hope, yeah. We normally associate the ideas of hope. You may leave, Cooney. I'll see you on Monday. So, we normally link light with truth or hope or opportunity. Is it being used in this way? No. Instead, we've got this idea of being blinded. What does that put you at an advantage or a disadvantage? Yeah, lovely. That idea of a disadvantage. Are they physically blinded? Well, let's have a look at them. I blink to keep from being blinded. So there is an element of the light being actually in their eyes, isn't there? They are physically having to close their eyes. But what could it also be? So physically they're like, oh, that's really bright. But what else could it be to use the term blinded? It's something that we use. It was blinded to the truth. Ignorant to the truth. What is that blinded that was being used as what kind of device when it... Lovely, well done, Gabe. So it physically, they are blinded, but it's also being used metaphorically as well. Blinded to the truth, you said. What's the truth? Say again?
If it isn't implied, then he's going to get arrested or shot.
Yeah, so there are consequences. Why? Why is he going to get arrested or shot? If I don't listen to the police, you know, nowadays, realistically, I'm not going to be arrested or shot straight away. But what's loaded with this piece of literature? The divide. Yeah, that social divide. Well done. Use the context they give you. I gave you a little context at the beginning that mentioned social divide. If they give you a context, there must be something that they want you to be aware of. So use it to its advantage. It's there. So we've now got a paragraph we can talk about foreboding. We've got a paragraph about foreboding with abandonment, the use of the declarative sentence. We've got a paragraph where we can talk about colloquialisms, and we can talk about the sense of disrespect. We've now got a new idea, this metaphor. Now, it's mentioned 3 times throughout this piece of text. So we could say it isn't just a metaphor. We could say it was a what kind of metaphor? Beautiful, Gabe. An extended metaphor. So I'm going to put extended just there. Our extended metaphor, because it's running through the text. It is literal and metaphorical. Okay. And we've also said, because of Cooney's contribution, that blinded could be linked to truth and hope and opportunity, but it also could be linked to the idea of them being vulnerable as well. Now, we were asked it whether we agree or disagree, ultimately, yeah? It doesn't say do you agree or disagree, but we can disagree. How do we feel in relation to, I felt this was anxious? We agree? How far do you agree? Wholeheartedly? Is there any moments where you possibly disagree, where you think that actually this could be something else? No? We don't want to go with that. Well, one could argue that possibly though moments that the use of the light imagery could show a moment of rebellion, that idea of wanting to break that social divide down, that Khalil wants to represent something more. Or you could talk about the idea of there's a hint at hope of change for the future, if you wanted to. But if you wholeheartedly agree that actually it does feel really anxious, then I wouldn't disagree with you, because it is a really tense piece of text. Let's have a little look down the end. What do we end on? But Daddy's instructions echo in my head. Get a good look at the cop's face. And if you remember his badge number, that's even better. What is the author using here? It's a particular structural device, yeah?
Foreshadowing that saying what happens to the problem.
Lovely. So there's a sense of foreshadowing, because his advice is to do what's she able to do for herself by knowing who that copper is.
Able to know how to comply and what the cop says.
Yeah. If you're trying to remember who or what he looks like and what his number is, that's implying that they might do something what? Bad, yeah, or wrong. It's implying that there's a corruption there, isn't there? It's implying corruption. So in order to have their badge number, that's like their ID, she's able to what? Report and protect herself, isn't she? So there's a sense of corruption. So there's a sense of foreshadowing through a what? This is like in italics for a reason, because it's a what from the past. A memory, yeah. So we call that a flashback, yeah? There's another one in there as well, isn't there? So we've got a flashback here and a flashback here, okay? What's the other flashback? See if we can link them together for another point, because that would be potentially our fourth paragraph, wouldn't it? If you're with somebody, you better hope they don't have anything on them, or both you're going down. Do we think we could link them together? Yeah. They're both from Dad, aren't they? They're both from Star's father. What are they implying, these use of flashback? Because this is a structural feature.
She's worried.
She's
Go back through it.
lovely. Say that again, sorry?
She's worried. She's having to go back through all the memories to think what to do. She's sort of, I guess, almost paralysed. She's having to think of what her dad said, because she can't do anything herself.
Girls, did you hear that?
It's like mental tips.
Yeah, there's a sense of worry. There's a paranoia. There's a sense of fear. You've talked about worry. You said fear. And the idea of she's almost given herself what? Because he's not there to do it. Advice. Well done. Is it advice, CE, or advise? CE. Well done. It's one I see an awful lot, that idea of muddling up advice and advise, the noun and the verb. Well done. So that idea of giving advice, she's giving herself the advice because her dad isn't there to give it. All right then, so we're nearly done. We're going to start putting this together in a second. Is there anything in this middle section, because we haven't annotated that part, we've talked about foreboding, because we want a nice range of features. We've talked about flashbacks and foreshadowing. We've talked about word level choice. We've talked about sentence level, the use of the declarative. We've talked about the metaphor to blind. Is there anything else we want to pull out? Maybe even use it in one of the points we've already made as extra evidence. Anything else there we would like to take? Khalil, I plead, do what he said. Khalil groans and takes his wallet out. The officer follows his movements with a flashlight. Anything we could take there, even if it was just a single word or phrase? Plead, nice. What word class is plead? Is it a thing or is it something she's doing? Verb, lovely, so something she's doing. So we could add in the verb plead implies, yeah? Where could we add that in? What does it imply, yeah? Different, can we hold that one and don't forget it? I'll come back to it, yeah? Yeah, a sense of begging. If you're begging someone, does it imply you're in control or...
No.
So there's like loss of control. Would that link to being anxious? Yeah, so we've got another link there to that sense of anxiety. So this is your potential fifth point you could build in, yeah? With the word choice plead. And would you like to finish us off? What would you like to
I
choose?
was going to say groan sort of
Yeah.
agrees with the statement because it shows he's annoyed.
Lovely. So we're going back to the annoyance that we had at the beginning. So we might take that groans and talk about it with the first point up there, mightn't we? What is quite clever about groans. I'm going to draw a little arrow up here, so we're going to use that. So it's something he's doing, so we know it's a verb. But the way he groans, doesn't want to do it, shows it's negative. What's it called if you don't want to? You might be reluctant. Might link in nicely to the point about disrespect. Yeah? It's almost onomatopoeic as well, isn't it? That groaning. It's that sense of it's that internal anguish. So you've got that onomatopoeia within the groan. A real sort of desperate defiance about having to do what he needs to do. Okay? Beautiful. Guys, we have a fully annotated piece of text here. What would our next job be before we actually started writing? Because obviously we've slowed this process down. We need to speed it up a little bit. Yeah?
Organise it a little bit.
Yeah, because it's a bit scatty. And we were organising as we went, but you now might want to group your ideas together. And we've talked about that. So could we do that as our next point? I like to number them. This is in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. So you might want plead and groan. We're going to be in with our paragraph 1, which was foreboding, cussing, and the idea of him being a fool. That's all our one. You might want to circle them. It might make them stand out a little bit more. Some people use colours and things, which are great if you've got time, but we don't have a lot of time on our hands. Okay? So if you can now group the other points together to make your 4 to 5 paragraphs, and you might swap and change your ideas to someone else, because how we make that those cohesive links is sometimes quite a personal choice. Please pay close attention here and here, because we've got layered analysis, and that's incredibly important. Okay? We'll pause there, guys.